Welcome to the People Solve Problems podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Flinchbaugh. Today, I am joined by Noah. We're actually going to take a very short break on the podcast. So next month in August, there will be no episodes airing. And so sort of, easing into that little summer vacation, going to do a short, solo episode here just to share some thoughts around some big levers that are being used to solve problems that, a lot of ways are causing more problems. So I hope you can join me and listen in on this. I'll share some different thoughts for those that are watching on video and are used to seeing my background. You may notice a new painting behind me. This is actually artwork from my long past great aunt who was in York County, relatively speaking, a fairly well-known artist many decades ago, and finally got some of her art on my wall and framed. So happy to share that. So what I want to talk about today is sort of three different examples of where leaders and companies are trying to sort of solve big problems with big levers, and whether the problem comes first and then they try to pull the big lever, or they just pull the big lever in hopes it solves big problems. Either way, that's a problem. So I'm going to talk about AI. I'm going to talk about org changes, which are not new, but still I see a lot going on right now for organizations. And I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of return to the office, work from home policy changes. These are all things that are sort of done at a blanket level, at a very broad level, and if I may be a little rude, an unthinking level, at least compared to the rigor that I think it deserves when you're going to put an organization through that much stuff. So, first of all, very broadly, why is this a problem? Well, when we try to solve problems in aggregate, when we pull big giant levers and try to solve the problem, there's a lack of connection between cause and effect. Very few problems are that big in aggregate where that lever makes sense. And most of those big problems, right, let's just say we have a budget problem. We don't have a budget problem. We have 1,000 budget problems. We're overspending here, we're overspending there, we're under earning there. You add them all together and it looks like an aggregate, a budget problem, but it's not a problem. It's a theme. And that's about all it is. It's a theme around a set of problems. Now these become real when they start to aggregate up. They have a multiplying effect. They can appear very, very daunting. They can be hard to move past. But understanding them at a detailed level is fundamental to making real progress. Very, very hard to solve. Product development is too slow. Our budgets are way out of control. We're struggling with revenue. With simply pulling one lever, and we've solved what was actually ailing us. So let's start with AI, for example. Now, part of what inspires this topic is I just published an article on my blog. We'll share this in the show notes, called AI Fragility. And it's essentially, I'm not, and this is sort of the subtitle, I'm not pro AI. I'm not anti AI. I do use AI a lot. I do talk to people about it. I never present work. I never present work from AI as my own. I make sure for a whole lot of reasons that I'm authoring my own stuff and so on and so forth. But I'm pro thoughtfulness. That's the essential ingredient here. Pro thoughtfulness about AI. So this article really kind of highlights some of the problems with AI adoption and deployment that are going on, from political problems, from employee problems, from misunderstanding the cost, to having cost overruns, thinking it's an efficiency gain, and then watching your budget explode in inexplicable ways, and then sort of in the end also having some real quality problems. With poor output. Just today, I tried to do something that had been done before many times, and the AI tried 4 times and just got worse and worse at even following instructions, where I just gave up and did it myself. Um, and this was not something new. This was basically repeating an old skill. Um, and I highlight some more of this. I think one of the more, I won't say famous, but massive solution or problems here was, or examples was Starbucks ripping out their AI that was in for 9 months for essentially inventory control. And you put all this time and effort into building the tool and testing it, into deploying it, into training your employees, into hearing all your employees complain, which was certainly part of the real back. You spend 9 months doing it, and then you kind of go, nope, we're going to just go back to what we were doing. And that assumes you didn't throw away some of those old processes, capabilities, and flows, and in the meantime. Right? So, so these become fundamental problems in AI. Now, again, what problem are we trying to solve with AI? Well, so many organizations and so many leaders are saying, hey, we need to go faster with AI. We need to do AI. We need an AI strategy. We need to do something. What problem are you trying to solve with that? In the end, for a surprising number of situations, and it's hard to get anybody to admit to this, it's FOMO. It's fear of missing out. It's, hey, we don't want to be left behind. Maybe AI is the solution to all our gaps. Maybe it's easier to tell shareholders that we're investing in AI than it is to talk about our revenue problems or our cost structure. Maybe it's easier to talk to friends. And, for a lot of people at an individual level, forget the company, AI provides a new place to learn, to go, to play, to experiment, to learn some new things. Doesn't mean that all those things are useful. Doesn't mean that that's the right strategy. It just means, hey, people are excited and interested and engaged in playing around with AI. And so if you run a company, you kind of go, well, sure, yeah, let's do that. I want to be interested. I don't want to be left behind as an individual leader. So FOMO is probably the number one problem that AI is trying to solve in organizational strategies. Now, that doesn't mean that once organizations get started that that's where they stay, right? They take that and start to flush out some more meaningful reasons and strategies and initiatives, but that's where it begins. And as a result, you have a lot of organizations that are they think they're behind. They're actually not. Once you go talk to other companies and see what's actually going on in deployment, not just in play and experimentation, but in deployment, you see, hey, yeah, you're not that far behind. Yes, there are absolutely some examples. Obviously, coding has had some impact, although when you're trying to do new stuff, you also hear plenty about some of the inefficiencies and inoptimal code being developed. But there are some opportunities there. Certainly, some opportunities where we weren't doing good work before. I know I've done this for myself for tasks that should be done that I either procrastinate on or don't do well because I'm not interested and it's not that vital. It has to be done, but it's not that vital to the value add I provide, or at least attempt to provide for my clients. And so, yeah, it's a great thing to outsource to AI. But I kind of, not only did I not care about deep quality all that much, I also wasn't replacing something that already had deep quality. In many of those cases, I was replacing something that had probably poor quality, or at some level wasn't getting done, at least in a timely manner, if at all, at some point. So as we pay attention to some of those challenges, I really encourage you to be very specific about what problem are you trying to solve with each deployment. Even at an individual level, if you deploy more broad generic tools, so if you're deploying Claude and deploying Gemini, are you asking the questions around what problems are individuals solving? Are you having that conversation as a boss, as a coach, as a strategist? What problems are people solving, or are they just plugging stuff into AI and seeing what happens? I stopped using, for example, at one point in my career, I was trying to master PowerPoint because I had to use it for speeches. And if I'm going to use it, I'm going to master it. That was my goal. And then I looked at that goal and thought, this is awful. I don't want to, this is not what I want my goals to be. So I just stopped using PowerPoint altogether. I didn't present with PowerPoints anymore. Rather than give you, rather than learn how to give you great slides, I'd rather give you no slides. And so I would whiteboard, I would just talk, I would do anything other than present in PowerPoint. But if you have to use PowerPoint and have to present good slides, then AI might help you solve that problem. And that's very clear and that's very objective and that's actually very uh, measurable, maybe not numerically, but at least can be evaluated whether you're getting the result or not that you want. So fundamentally, when you look at AI, what problem are you solving? If if you have a clear statement on why you have an AI strategy, um, probably not connected to good problem statements. But once you get there, get to deployment, get to individual use, get to team use, get clear about what problems you're trying to solve. Because to do AI or not AI, AI is here. It's being used in your organization, no matter how many guardrails you have up. Um, it will be used in the future. There's plenty of time to catch up. Very hard to be left behind unless an entire strategy is crafted that outdates your company. Um, so many ways to just get started and catch up. Um, Partly because AI can help you with that, and partly because the tools are getting stronger. So why jump in on Gen 5 when you can jump in on Gen 7 and catch up faster? So I don't think you're missing anything. Fear of missing out is perhaps the wrong approach. Be curious, be learning, be experimenting, but in deployment, make sure uh, you're really understanding cause and effect, really understanding the work, really understanding the output. You have the ability to evaluate success, and you're fundamentally solving clear problem statements. Now, org design is the same thing. Now, this isn't new. This has been going on for forever, but there are a lot more org designs going on now, in my opinion. Again, just very subjective, hearing conversations and stories. Some of it was coming out of some of the stability that organizations sought during COVID. Some of it's dealing with an unstable marketplace and an unstable economy, and again, trying to do something, trying to pull a lever. Here's the thing about org design. Um, it two things actually. First, it is never the only way to solve a problem. For almost every problem that an org design solves, you can also solve it with process design, culture, behaviors, or new capabilities. Right now, sometimes absolutely org design is a better solution than one of those three, but not most of the time, just some of the time. So really challenge yourself before you go down that path. Do I need to do an org design, or is there another pathway here? Uh, the other thing that's always true about org design is that it creates new problems. I used to call it the shell game, right? I have waste over here and I move them around, and then all of a sudden the waste is over here. So fundamentally, that's what org design does. Is we better connected these resources. Now we've decoupled those resources. But the solid lines on an org chart are fundamentally just, it doesn't come with one. You review somebody's, do their performance review. You decide if you fire them. You probably approve their expenses. And the rest of the time, you just have, those things behind you as you're trying to set priorities, influence. And anybody, the higher up you go, can tell you, yeah, being higher up, you have more solid lines underneath you. It doesn't mean you have more control. Um, so fundamentally, right, as it still requires leadership, requires culture, requires all those things. Just because you moved somebody off, they just reported to me, all my problems will be solved. It's not how that works. So at the start, as we think about org design, we need a very clear problem statement. What is the prime? You might be trying to overcome a whole bunch of things. And that's true because a lot of things go along with whatever your new design is, especially if it's pretty dramatic for an organization. What's the primary? What got you here, right? What got you getting to the point where you woke up and said, "This is the lever we have to pull"? because it's disruptive. It's hard to experiment. It's hard to validate quickly, um, and it creates new problems. So you better know what result you're trying to get out of doing that. So get clear about that. But then, no matter what, you've got to understand you've created new problems. So what are they? What are they going to be? What are they as you discover them? And how do we solve those with either minor tweaks to the org design or process, behaviors, capabilities? Um, so org change is one of those big levers we like to pull. This is why the term, rearranging the chairs in the Titanic is so popular, because it's done to feel like we're solving something, if not done thoughtfully. And that's the key. The last one I just want to touch on briefly is return to office, right? So everybody, not everybody, but many organizations were work from home, then they were hybrid. Some were returned to the office, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week. And then we kind of say, we have a culture problem. So let's return to the office. Very generic solution to a very broad and generically defined problem statement. And because it's generically defined, it's very rarely successful for the problem you thought you were trying to solve. Just bringing people to the office doesn't fix the culture, right? It might make it easier to observe the culture. That's very fair, but it doesn't actually fix it. You have to give people experiences. And quite frankly, a vast majority of organizations that return to the office under some kind of mandate, the experiences were bad. The experience where I came to the office and I spent 8 hours on Teams meetings and then I drove home. What was the point of that? And this is one of the reasons that I read the book, A Year with No Pants, which is about a company that was fully remote before the pandemic started. I read it the second the pandemic started to learn more about how organizations work remotely while maintaining culture. And, they were very thoughtful about how they spent time together in person, often at hotels, but they got together in person periodically, very thoughtfully. Not the sort of unthinking, just people are in the office, but we're going to keep meeting like we were in the pandemic. We're going to keep having hour-long Teams meetings. And the fact is, everybody can see that just blindly pulling that lever doesn't work, which is why many of the executives who, whether they supported that policy change or not, you end up seeing they're not in the office either. There's a policy, but then you go and meet with them, and sure enough, they're at home. Not all the time, but they know that in the end, for them, hybrid was more effective for a whole bunch of reasons, and they also aren't probably punishing a lot of their employees that are doing the same thing. So again, work from home, return to office, hybrid, whatever you're doing there, opening an office, closing an office, be clear. What problem or problems are you trying to solve? And it's probably not one but big generically defined one that just says culture. Know what you're trying to do. And then you can add all the right things in your process, your capabilities, et cetera, to get to that result. So as you're thinking about this, as people are trying to pull big levers, ask the question, what problem are you fundamentally trying to solve? Ask questions like, are there other pathways? Are there other solutions to overcome that problem? And ask what new problems are going to result from this solution path that we're deciding to choose. Ask those questions, get into the details. That's where the work is done. That's where the results are found. So there's a little speech, a little tirade, a little rant about trying to solve big problems generically defined by pulling big levers. Almost never works. And what we need to do about it. 3 examples: AI, org change, return to office, where that seems to be pretty prevalent. So again, we'll be on vacation, be on holiday, no episodes coming out in August. We have some great folks coming in September. We're going to have several episodes digging into sort of lean product development type of topics. So more on that later. Be safe and be well.